Hi, enjoy listening. Andrew Collins had been called many things in his career. Dogged, relentless, too stubborn for his own good. But in the small kitchen of their modest apartment on the edge of Chicago, he was only one thing. The man his wife could no longer look at without pain. Andrew, we need to live separately. I think it's best if we divorce, Tanya said, her voice low but cutting, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. The words hit harder than any punch he had taken in his years on the force. He stared at her, speechless. Divorce? After everything? He expected accusations, even anger. But this finality, this cold decision, was the last thing he had braced himself for. Tanya, why? He finally managed, his voice hoarse. We love each other. We've been through hell. You know we need each other to get through this. She shook her head, her gaze sliding away from him. Love doesn't matter anymore. Not when there's nothing tying us together. Nothing left. He stood abruptly. Nothing left! Tanya, we had Diana. She snapped, rising too, her hands trembling. Don't you dare say her name like she still belongs to us. You gave yourself to your job, Andrew. You gave it everything, even our daughter. Do you even realize you never knew her favorite story at bedtime? That you weren't there when she lost her first tooth? You were out chasing criminals while I was raising her alone. And then one day she was gone. Stolen from right under us. And where were you? In an interrogation room. Always somewhere else. Her voice cracked, and she shoved past him, sobbing. I can't see your face anymore without thinking about that day, without thinking about the phone calls you didn't answer. Just leave. Live with your work. Since that's what you chose over us. Andrew staggered back, the weight of her words crushing him. He opened his mouth, but found no defense. Because she was right. The threats had come early in the case. Faceless voices warning him to drop it. Whispering that his family wasn't safe, but he hadn't believed them. This wasn't the 90s anymore. It wasn't Chicago in its bloody prime. He thought intimidation was just empty noise. He had been wrong. The day he cracked the case wide open, Diana vanished. 4 years old. A bright, laughing little girl in pigtails. Gone from a park bench while her mother and grandmother were distracted. One moment she was licking her ice cream. The next the world had collapsed. Tanya had called him 20 times, but he'd been locked in an interview room, oblivious, certain that nothing would touch his family. By the time he saw the missed calls, it was already too late. The first days after the abduction were the kind that never left a man. Endless searches, sleepless nights, his chest crushed under the weight of what-ifs. The city had been torn apart, but Diana was never found. No ransom calls, no demands, just silence. And in that silence, Tanya's hope had withered into fury. Andrew didn't argue now. He simply grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, stuffed it with clothes, and walked out. His wife's muffled sobs trailed behind him like ghosts. On the street below, Chicago's hum carried on. Sirens wailing somewhere distant, a couple laughing on the corner. Life moving forward as if his world hadn't just ended. He thought of his captain's offer. "If you ever need to disappear for a while, Collins, I can find you a place, somewhere small, rural, away from the city." Now, for the first time, he understood. Andrew pulled out his phone and dialed Captain Reynolds. "Mark, it's time. Find me that place, somewhere nobody knows my name." The line was silent for a moment. Then a low sigh answered him. "All right, Andrew. I'll make a few calls. But listen to me, no matter where you go, you're still one of us. You're always welcome back." Andrew hung up, eyes fixed on the dimly lit train station across the street. The idea of a town miles away where no one whispered his daughter's name in pity, where Tanya's tearful face didn't haunt him, sounded less like exile and more like salvation. He didn't know then that the place he was running to was the same place where his past and his daughter waited for him. 2 weeks later, Andrew stepped off a weathered bus at what passed for the town station, a single bench under a cracked plastic awning, surrounded by weeds that grew taller than the sign that read, "Welcome to Brooksville." It wasn't even a town, really. More of a settlement that time had forgotten, 70 miles south of Milwaukee. A place most maps didn't bother to mark. Population, maybe 1,000, if you counted the stray dogs and rusted-out trucks. A local sheriff's deputy, young and sharp-eyed, was waiting. He extended a hand with the stiff politeness of someone meeting a stranger he wasn't sure he could trust. "Collins, I'm Deputy Harris. Sheriff couldn't make it. Said you'd know why you're here." Andrew shook the hand firmly. "Just Andrew. And yeah, I know." The deputy's eyes flickered with curiosity, but he didn't ask. He only grabbed one of Andrew's bags and nodded toward a waiting patrol car. As they drove through the narrow streets, Andrew saw what Captain Reynolds had warned him about: sagging porches with peeling paint, yards choked with rusted appliances, men and women idling on stoops with beer bottles at 9 in the morning. This had once been a mill town, Harris explained. When the mill closed 15 years ago, all that was left was unemployment and meth. "Sheriff says you'll be covering the east side mostly. Folks out there got a way of handling things. You'll learn quick." Andrew didn't answer. His eyes caught on a boarded-up convenience store with "No Loitering" spray-painted in red. A half-collapsed playground where a lone swing creaked in the wind. Something about it twisted in his gut. The car stopped outside a squat, 2-bedroom house at the edge of town. Paint flaked from the siding. The porch sagged, but there was a wood stove out back, and more importantly, privacy. "Place comes with the job," Harris said. "Nobody's lasted here longer than a year. Either they burn out or—" He trailed off, leaving the implication hanging. Andrew nodded. "I'll manage." Inside, the air smelled of mildew and abandonment. Dust coated the counters, and the floor groaned beneath his boots. He opened a window, letting in a sharp October breeze, then started unpacking. For the first time in months, the silence felt almost welcome. No Tanya. No endless ringing phones. Just emptiness he could shape into something bearable. That evening, after hours of cleaning, he wandered the streets alone. The town was eerily quiet for 9 o'clock. A pair of feral dogs padded across the road. Neon from the only open bar flickered weakly, its sign buzzing like a dying insect. Then he heard it. Angry voices rising just ahead. 2 women were clawing at each other in the dirt road, pulling hair, screaming obscenities loud enough to wake half the block. They weren't drunks from the bar. Their clothes were decent, though now ripped and dishevelled. Andrew's instincts kicked in. He rushed forward, seizing the taller one by the arms and dragging her back, while barking, "Break it up! That's enough!" The second woman, flushed and panting, glared at him, but stumbled away, muttering curses under her breath as she stalked toward a side street. The one he held shook him off. Her eyes narrowed, not frightened, but appraising. "You must be the new cop," she said, almost laughing. "Thought you'd be younger." Andrew straightened. "And you must be the reason half the town can't get any sleep tonight." She tilted her head, amused. "Order and rules don't stick here, officer. They never do. So don't waste your breath." With that, she brushed the dirt off her skirt and sauntered away, leaving him standing in the middle of the road. Andrew exhaled slowly. He'd only been in Brooksville a day, and already the place was showing its teeth. But as he turned back toward his rented house, he felt something he hadn't expected. Purpose. The chaos here didn't repel him, it steadied him. Work was what he needed. Work was the only thing that kept the memories at bay. What he didn't know was that among the tangled lives of Brooksville, in a neglected house not far from where he stood, his daughter's story hadn't ended at all. By the end of his first week in Brooksville, Andrew Collins had learned two things. First, everyone in town had a record. Maybe not everyone, but close enough. You couldn't walk 3 blocks without passing someone who had been arrested for fighting, theft, or worse. Second, people here didn't trust outsiders, especially not cops. Even the ones who called for help would greet him at the door with narrowed eyes, as though weighing whether calling had been worth the risk. Still, he worked the way he always had, methodically, persistently, with no illusions. He broke up bar fights, hauled drunks to the station, handled a burglary case that had been sitting cold for 6 months. By the 3rd week, people weren't exactly friendly, but they stopped pretending not to know his name. On a damp Thursday night, Andrew got his first knock on the door that wasn't from the sheriff's office. A woman in her late 30s stood there, her hair pulled back in a loose bun, her eyes tired but steady. She wore a nurse's uniform under her jacket. "You're Officer Collins, right?" "Andrew's fine," he said, stepping aside. "Coming out of the cold." She shook her head. "I won't stay long. My name's Linda Hayes. I run the clinic here. We don't have much, just a few beds and basic supplies. But I could use your help." He studied her face. There was something earnest there, something that hadn't yet been beaten out by the town's cynicism. "What's the problem?" She hesitated, then sighed. "My neighbours, Natasha and Sergei Miller, they fight every night. Drink, scream, throw things. I've patched them both up more times than I can count. But it's not just the fighting. It's what happens after. Sometimes I hear crying. Not adult crying. A child." Andrew frowned. "They don't have kids." "That's what everyone says. But I've lived next door to them for years, and I know what I hear." She pulled her jacket tighter. "Look, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't shake the feeling something's off in that house. And if there is a kid in there—" Her voice trailed away, but Andrew didn't need her to finish. He'd seen too many cases where a child was the silent victim. "I'll check it out," he said. Relief flickered in her eyes. "Thank you, just be careful. They don't take kindly to strangers poking around." The next evening, Andrew walked the overgrown path to the miller's house. The yard was a jungle of weeds, rusted bikes, and empty beer bottles. The blinds were drawn tight. From inside came muffled shouting. He rapped on the door. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Finally, the door creaked open, just a few inches. And there, in the thin slice of light, a small face appeared. A girl, maybe 6 years old. Dirt smudged her cheeks, and her hair hung in tangled strands around hollow eyes that froze Andrew where he stood. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. His heart hammered against his ribs. The face was older, thinner, but familiar in a way that made his throat close. "Diana," he whispered, before he could stop himself. The girl blinked, tears filling her eyes. She opened her mouth as if to speak. "Hey!" a man's rough voice barked from inside. Heavy footsteps shook the floor. "What did I tell you about the damn door?" The girl flinched, shrinking back. Andrew's hand shot to the grip of his sidearm as a shadow moved toward the doorway. The door swung wider, revealing a broad-shouldered man with bloodshot eyes and a leather belt hanging loose in his hand. Behind him, a woman leaned against the wall, a cigarette dangling from her fingers, her expression sharp and bitter. The man froze when he saw the badge clipped to Andrew's belt. The belt in his hand slipped to the floor. Andrew kept his voice even, though every muscle in his body was coiled tight. "Evening, I got a complaint about noise. Thought I'd check in." The man forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Just a little argument. Nothing for the law to worry about." Andrew's eyes slid past him to the girl, who stood trembling in the shadows. His chest tightened. He didn't know yet if it was possible, but deep inside, hope sparked like fire catching dry wood. The man blocking the doorway smelled of cheap whiskey and sweat. His name, Andrew knew from the town records, was Sergey Miller. 2 DUIs, 1 assault charge, plenty of noise complaints that had gone nowhere. His wife, Natasha, had her own sheet, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest. A toxic pair, bound together by alcohol and rage. But none of that mattered right now, not compared to the girl standing just behind them. Andrew took a half step forward, keeping his voice steady. "Mind if I come in?" Sergey bristled. "You got a warrant?" "Don't need one to follow up on a disturbance." Natasha let out a sharp laugh, her voice jagged from years of smoking. "Ain't no disturbance, just a married couple having words. You city cops don't understand country living." Andrew's jaw clenched. He could see the girl's small hands trembling at her sides, her eyes wide and glassy. Every instinct screamed at him to scoop her up and run, but he forced himself to stay measured. One wrong move and the situation could spiral. "What's her name?" Andrew asked suddenly, nodding toward the girl. The room seemed to freeze. Sergey's face darkened. "That's none of your business." Natasha's smirk faltered, just slightly. She's my niece. We're looking after her for family." Andrew lowered his voice. Then you won't mind if I check that out? The man's fists tightened, and for a split second, Andrew thought he'd swing. Instead, Sergei stepped aside with a stiff shrug. Go on then, but don't waste my time. She's ours. Andrew entered cautiously, hand hovering near his holster. The inside of the house was worse than the outside. Trash bags piled in corners, cigarette butts ground into the carpet, the stench of beer heavy in the air. He crouched down in front of the girl. Up close, the recognition hit him like a gut punch. Her features had thinned with age, but her eyes, the same clear grey-blue eyes Tanya had, were unmistakable. His throat tightened. Sweetheart, he whispered, barely daring to breathe the words. Do you remember your name? The girl looked at him for a long moment. Then her lip trembled. Diana. The room spun. Andrew closed his eyes, fighting to stay upright. His daughter. After 4 years of searching, of guilt and grief, she was standing right in front of him, frightened, malnourished, but alive. He swallowed hard, forcing composure. It's all right, Diana. You're safe now. Sergei barked a laugh, stepping closer. Safe? She's fine here. Kid needed a home. We gave her one. Andrew rose slowly to his full height, his voice cold steel. You stole her. You took my daughter. Natasha's face twisted with sudden fury. Don't you dare. Don't you put this on us. You think I wanted this? She jabbed a finger at Sergei. He's the one who brought her home that night. Said it would fix things between us. Said having a kid would make us normal. Her voice broke into a ragged scream. But it didn't. It only made everything worse. Diana whimpered and pressed against Andrew's leg. He rested a hand gently on her shoulder, never breaking eye contact with the Millers. This ends tonight, Andrew said, pulling his phone from his pocket. With his free hand, he dialed Captain Reynolds. Mark, I found her. I found Diana. I need a unit here now. Sergei's face drained of colour. You can't just take her! Andrew's hand moved to his holster, calm but unmistakable. Try to stop me. For once, Sergei stayed quiet. Natasha collapsed into a chair, her face buried in her hands, muttering something too low to hear. Andrew lifted Diana into his arms. She clung to him desperately, her small frame trembling, her tears soaking through his shirt. He kissed the top of her head, fighting back his own tears. You're going home, he whispered. I promise, baby girl. You're going home. For the next half hour, Andrew paced the worn floorboards of his small house, his daughter pressed close against him, as if letting go for even a second might cause her to vanish again. The sheriff's deputies had arrived quickly, carting the Millers away in handcuffs. The paperwork would come later, but for now, Brooksville was quieter than it had been in years. Diana sat curled on his couch, wrapped in the only clean blanket he had managed to find, her wide eyes following every move he made. She barely spoke, only whispering a question now and then. Are you really my dad? Or, you won't give me back to them, will you? And each time Andrew knelt and swore with every fibre of his being that she was safe. But one more call had to be made. His hand shook as he scrolled to Tanya's number. He hadn't spoken to her since the night she told him to leave. He could still hear the break in her voice, the bitterness that had bled through her grief. He pressed call. It rang once, twice. Then her voice came on, guarded. "Andrew, why are you—" "Don't hang up," he interrupted, his throat tight. "Please, just listen. I need you to come here, right now." Her silence on the other end stretched painfully long. "What happened? Did something—" "I found her, Tanya." His voice cracked, the words trembling out of him. "I found Diana. She's alive. She's with me. You need to come, as fast as you can." There was a sharp intake of breath, a gasp that sounded like it tore straight out of her chest. "Andrew, don't do this. Don't you dare do this to me, unless I'm not lying." His eyes blurred as he looked at the little girl on the couch, clutching the blanket like armor. "She's right here. She's safe. She remembers you. Tanya, please, just come." On the other end, a choked sob. "Then, send me the address." He texted her the directions with unsteady hands. The hours until she arrived felt endless. Andrew sat with Diana, coaxing her to eat the soup Linda Hayes, the nurse, had brought over. The girl nibbled cautiously, as though unaccustomed to being fed properly. Every bruise on her thin arms, every hollow angle of her cheeks, made his chest ache with rage and guilt. Finally, headlights flared outside. A car door slammed. And then, "Diana!" The cry was so raw, so piercing, that the girl bolted upright before Andrew could react. She stumbled to the door just as it burst open. Tanya stood in the frame, her coat half-buttoned, hair dishevelled from the drive, her face streaked with tears. For a heartbeat, she froze. Then she fell to her knees, arms outstretched. Diana's small body collided with hers, and the sound that left Tanya's throat was half laughter, half sob, shaking her to the core. She held her daughter as if she might vanish again, rocking her, pressing frantic kisses to her dirty hair and bruised cheeks. "My baby," she wept. "My baby girl." Andrew stood back, his own vision blurred. He wanted to go to them, to hold them both, but something rooted him in place. He wasn't sure Tanya would want him there, not after everything. But then Tanya lifted her face, eyes shining through tears, and met his gaze. She reached out a trembling hand. "Come here, Andrew." He crossed the room in 2 steps. Tanya pulled him down beside her, and for the first time in 4 years, the 3 of them were in one embrace, messy, tear-streaked, broken. But what? For a long time, none of them spoke. The only sound was Diana's soft, hiccuping breaths, her small fingers clutching both of them like anchors. At last, Tanya whispered, her voice raw but sure, "We get another chance. All of us." Andrew kissed the top of his daughter's head, then pressed his forehead against Tanya's. His voice was steady now, certain. "Yes, and this time, I won't waste it." For 3 days the house barely slept. Deputies came and went, social workers asked endless questions, and Captain Reynolds himself sat at Andrew's kitchen table until dawn, taking his statement piece by piece. The story unravelled like something out of a nightmare. 4 years earlier, Diana had been taken during a custody dispute in another county. Natasha Miller's younger sister, barely more than a teenager, had been mixed up with the child's daycare at the time. She vanished with the girl, handing her off to the Millers when she couldn't cope. From there, the paper trail went cold. The Millers hadn't tried to pass Diana off as their biological daughter. Instead, they told neighbors and officials she was a niece, left in their care. No one checked closely. Brooksville wasn't the kind of place where people asked many questions. Now the truth was out, and the Millers faced charges that would keep them behind bars for decades. But the headlines and arrests couldn't undo the damage. At night, Diana woke screaming, her small voice strangled with terror until Tanya rocked her back to sleep. She clung to both parents constantly, unable to bear either of them stepping out of the room. Her laughter, when it came, was brittle and short-lived, as if she didn't quite remember how to use it. Tanya handled most of it with a quiet ferocity that startled Andrew. She stayed by her daughter's side every minute, cooking meals, brushing her hair, even sleeping on the floor beside her bed. Watching her, Andrew realized how much grief had hardened her, but also how much love still glowed beneath the scar tissue. He helped where he could, reading bedtime stories, driving to the sheriff's office, fielding reporters, but there were moments he felt like an intruder in his own daughter's life. One evening, after Diana finally drifted into a fitful sleep, Tanya found Andrew on the porch, a cigarette burning low between his fingers. He hadn't smoked in years, but tonight the old vice had found him again. "You shouldn't pick that back up," she said softly. He stubbed it out against the railing, ashamed. "I know." He stood in silence for a moment, listening to the night insects hum across the fields. "You did it, Andrew," Tanya said finally, her voice rough. "You found her. You brought her home." He shook his head. "I almost didn't. If Linda Hayes hadn't pushed me, if the Millers had decided to run." His jaw tightened. "I let her slip away once. I'll never forgive myself for that." Tanya turned toward him, her face pale in the moonlight. "Don't you dare start carrying that alone." "We both lost her. We both broke." Her eyes glistened. "But she's back now. And if we're going to help her heal, we can't keep punishing ourselves." Andrew swallowed hard, the words catching in his throat. "I don't know if I can be the man you used to believe in." Tanya's lips trembled, but she reached out and took his hand. "Then don't be that man. Be better." For the first time in years, Andrew let himself believe that maybe he could. Inside, Diana stirred, murmuring in her sleep. Both parents turned instinctively toward the door. Without another word, they went back inside together. 3 weeks passed. The chaos slowly gave way to routine, if you could call it that. Diana was officially placed back in her parents' custody after a whirlwind of hearings and documents. Every day brought a new appointment, therapy sessions in the city, check-ins with social services. Visits from well-meaning church ladies bringing casseroles wrapped in foil. At school, Diana clung to Tanya at drop-off and sat alone at recess. The other kids stared, whispered, some even asked bluntly, "Were you really stolen?" She never answered. She just gripped her backpack straps and kept her eyes on the ground. Andrew hated it. He wanted to shield her, to scoop her up and keep her home, where the world couldn't touch her. But the counselors insisted she needed normalcy, and Tanya agreed. She has to learn how to belong again, she told him, even if it's hard. The town, meanwhile, had its own way of reacting. Some neighbours treated Andrew like a hero. Men at the diner slapped his back, women clasped his hands, thanking him for bringing that sweet girl home. Others, though, looked at him with thinly veiled suspicion. A few muttered about how convenient it was that he was the one who found Diana after all these years. Brooksville thrived on gossip, and the story was fuel for months. Andrew tried to ignore it, but it wore on him. He'd see Tanya tense when she overheard whispers at the grocery store, or when an old friend turned away without a word. The town had already seen them break once. Now it seemed to be waiting to see if they'd break again. At night, after Diana was asleep, Andrew and Tanya sat at the kitchen table, the silence between them filled with both comfort and unease. Some nights they talked about school, about therapy, about bills piling up. Other nights, they just sat, drinking coffee that had long gone cold, the past thick between them. One evening, Tanya broke the silence. "You know they're watching us," she said, her voice flat. Andrew looked up. "The town?" "Everyone. They want to see if we can make it. If we'll fight again. If we'll fall apart. Sometimes I think," she trailed off, staring at her hands. "Sometimes I think I don't even know if we can." Andrew's chest tightened. "Do you want me to leave?" Her head snapped up, eyes fierce. "No, don't you dare leave. She needs you. I need you too." Her voice wavered. "I don't know how to stop being afraid." Andrew reached across the table, covering her trembling hands with his own. "Then we'll be afraid together, but we'll stay. That's what matters now." She looked at him for a long moment, then gave a small, broken smile. "You always were stubborn." "Still am," he said softly. The sound of footsteps interrupted them. Diana appeared in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide from a bad dream. Without hesitation, both parents rose, each taking one of her hands, leading her back to bed. And as Diana drifted to sleep between them, Andrew realized something he hadn't dared believe before. They might not be whole yet, but they were learning how to be a family again. Diana didn't speak of the Millers at first. Whenever their names came up in hushed adult conversations, she would stiffen, clutch her stuffed rabbit tighter, and change the subject. But healing has its own timing, and one night it began. It was late, and the house was quiet. Tanya was folding laundry in the living room when she heard a soft voice behind her. "Mum!" She turned. Diana stood in the doorway, hair tangled from tossing in bed, her small face pale. "Can I sleep with you tonight?" "Of course, baby," Tanya said, pulling her close. As they lay under the blankets, Diana whispered, "They told me you didn't want me anymore." The words sliced through Tanya like a knife. She felt her breath catch, but she forced her voice to stay steady. "That wasn't true, sweetheart. Not for 1 second." "They said you forgot me, that I was theirs now." Diana's voice quivered. but she kept talking, as if afraid she'd lose courage if she stopped. Sometimes I believed them, because it was easier than hoping. Tanya's arms tightened around her daughter, tears spilling unchecked. I never forgot. Your daddy never forgot. We were looking for you the whole time. Andrew, standing in the hallway, unseen, pressed a hand against the doorframe, his throat burning. He wanted to rush in, to swear to his daughter that she was wrong, that they had fought every day for her. But he stayed where he was, knowing this was Tanya's moment. Mother to daughter, truth for truth. Over the following weeks, Diana spoke more. She described small details, the smell of Mr. Miller's aftershave, the way Mrs. Miller never let her cut her hair, the rules about what she could say at school. Most of it sounded ordinary, almost dull, until it wasn't. They didn't like it when I cried, Diana said once during a therapy session, her voice small. They locked me in the laundry room so I'd learn to be quiet. Andrew's fists clenched until his knuckles ached. Tanya reached for his hand, anchoring him, reminding him they couldn't change the past by breaking in the present. The therapist, a calm woman with silver hair, reassured them gently. She's beginning to process. This is good. Painful, yes, but necessary. Let her talk even when it hurts you to listen. At home, Andrew struggled. Every new detail made him want to storm into the jail and tear the Millers apart with his bare hands. But he had Diana back, fragile and alive, and he knew the only real revenge was giving her a safe life they could never touch. One night, when Andrew tucked her into bed, Diana touched his sleeve. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby." Her eyes searched his face. "Are you gonna go away again?" The question nearly shattered him. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. "No, sweetheart. Never again. I'm here for good." She nodded slowly, but her grip on his hand didn't loosen until she finally fell asleep. Andrew sat there in the dark for a long time, staring at his little girl's face, silently vowing to himself that no matter what it cost, he would keep that promise. Spring crept into Brooksville slowly, as if unsure it was welcome after such a bitter winter. The dogwoods bloomed along Main Street, kids rode bikes again, and the smell of fresh-cut grass drifted through open windows. In the Johnson household, life was not normal. Not yet, maybe not ever, but it was steadier. Diana began to laugh again. Not often, not loud, but enough to light a room when it came. Sometimes it happened during Saturday pancake mornings, when Andrew flipped one too high and it hit the ceiling. Sometimes in the backyard, when Tanya taught her how to braid dandelion chains. Each small burst of joy felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. School remained a challenge. Some kids still whispered, but a few brave ones sat with her at lunch now. She even joined art club, her drawings quiet but full of colour. Her therapist said it was progress. Tanya taped the sketches to the fridge as if they were gold. Andrew worked harder than ever, not just at his construction job, but at being present, showing up for school drop-offs, helping with homework, learning how to listen instead of rushing to to fix. Some days he still felt the weight of other people's stares, the questions he couldn't answer. But when Diana smiled at him, when Tanya leaned against his shoulder at night, the noise of the world faded. One Sunday, after church, the three of them walked down to the riverbank, a place they hadn't visited since before Diana was taken. The air was warm, the water moving slow. Diana picked up a smooth stone and studied it. "Can I throw it, Daddy?" Andrew grinned. "Let's see your arm." She wound back and flung the stone. It skipped once, twice, then sank with a small splash. Her eyes widened. "Did you see that?" "I sure did," Andrew said, pride thick in his voice. Tanya laughed, brushing hair from Diana's face. For a moment, it felt almost like old times. Before loss, before grief, before everything cracked. They sat on the grass together, the river humming quietly around them. Tanya reached for Andrew's hand, and he took it without hesitation. Diana leaned against them both, her head resting on her mother's shoulder. For the first time in years, they were not three broken people orbiting pain. They were a family again, battered, scarred, but together. The road ahead would not be easy. They knew that. Healing would take time, trust would take work, and memories would never fully leave. But as the sun warmed their faces and Diana's laughter rippled through the air, Andrew and Tanya understood something vital. The Millers had stolen years, but they had not stolen forever. Forever still belonged to them. If you like the story, I would be very happy to have your support. Click the thumbs up. And to not miss new stories, subscribe and click on the bell. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and all the best.